Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. This is Dr. Blakeney, and I am at President Nixon's Library and Museum in Yorba Linda, California. I know he rose up through the ranks as someone in Congress and eventually became the president. Of course, he's famous for the Watergate scandal, and let's go in and find out more about President Nixon. I'll see you in a second. Bye-bye. All right, so now that we're in the building, we have this beautiful entryway, and you also get to see the home that Nixon's father built, and even the bed where he was born. These are original and pretty impressive that they've been able to preserve them for this long. You'll notice the ice box, they didn't have a refrigerator, so you had ice delivered, and this symboled how much ice you needed at the time, 15, 20, 30, or 60 pounds of ice. Nixon's father owned a little convenience store of the time, and Nixon was raised pretty normally. He went to school, he did well academically, he did well in athletics, pretty popular guy. He would eventually join the military, as many children did during that time, and eventually he became a lawyer, and he was pretty successful as a lawyer. Nixon loved to read and write. It's a theme throughout his life, as well as his ability to rise and then fall. Nixon's political career is pretty interesting. In 1946, he became a representative in the U.S. House of Representatives, and then 4 years later, in 1950, he became a senator from California. 1953, he became Dwight D. Eisenhower's vice president, and after that, he, I believe, went back to California, ran for governor, lost, but then got the nomination for the Republican Party in 1960, lost to Kennedy, but would come back and win the 1968 and 1972 elections for United States president. We'll talk more about that right now. In 1968, President Nixon ran on a law and order campaign saying the government should be smaller, but also there should be order in society, and Americans agreed. He won in 1968, and then in 1972, he won by a landslide. I think it was the second biggest victory of any president ever at the time, and it may stand until today. Regarding foreign policy or interaction with other countries, Nixon was dealing with the Vietnam War, and it would end in 1975, but he would be president during a big portion of it from 1968 until the time he left office. He also opened up relationships with China and with the USSR. The U.S. had struggled to have formal relationships, but Nixon kind of opened the door to that. One of the jobs of the president is to meet with famous people and to cure favor with them. So here's him with Elvis. The U.S. sent a lot of people. 12 people have been on the moon, and many of them went during Nixon's presidency. He also dealt with busing and segregation as a result of the 1954 Brown versus the Board of Education, which opened up the schools to everyone. And finally, we oftentimes hear about like the winter White House of President Trump. Well, President Nixon used La Casa Pacifica in California as a home base when he wasn't in the White House, and this is where he did a lot of his governing during his presidency. The seminal event in Nixon's presidency was Watergate, in which a group of people associated with President Nixon broke into the Democratic National Headquarters at the Watergate, which is really close to the Lincoln Memorial, for example. And they broke in, and eventually Nixon had people leaving left and right from his administration, and eventually he resigned as president, the only one to do that. And President Ford, who was his vice president at the time, about a month later, basically said anything that he did, we cannot prosecute, and so the issue was kind of over. Although there's still a lot of people that think President Nixon should have been charged with crimes, etc. So I'll leave it up to you, but you can certainly research a lot more on the Watergate and everything that happened with it. I'd like to conclude by telling you that Nixon was a much more complex person than Watergate itself. He was a prolific reader, a prolific writer, and after his presidency, he became a close advisor for almost every president up until his death, which I believe occurred in April of 1994 at 81. So that's President Nixon. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you in the classroom soon.